Hello, introduction to philosophy classes. So know that I'm preparing this feedback not only for my front range classes, but also my Red Rocks classes, so that because I have an introduction to philosophy class at Red Rocks and also at Front Range. Okay, so basically I'm addressing or offering feedback for these two questions. Okay, for the homework that you've submitted or are about to submit. Okay, so the first question is, what is metaphysics in general? So one thing I'm noticing right off the top is that students usually want to write something like metaphysics studies relations, or metaphysics focuses on X, Y, or Z. Metaphysics does the work of generalizing into abstraction. Always remember that it's not metaphysics that does that. Metaphysics is not a person, okay? So you want to think this. We study metaphysics in order to understand relations, okay? So you're keying into that study, and then also how we are using metaphysics, okay? And sometimes students too will want to, if they write that way, they'll want to say something like, we as humans, you study metaphysics. You don't need to write anything like we as humans, because we already know that we're human, and when we say we usually just mean generally we. You don't need to specify human. So big point is, don't write about metaphysics as if it's a person, okay? And then also, what is metaphysics specifically by way of one of its subcategories? How is metaphysics categorial? So a lot of students were separating that out and showing me one of its subcategories, such as freedom, religion, free will, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and look at the assignment here. What is metaphysics? Edit. You're looking at it the way I would, but this is fine. So let's see. Metaphysics is categorial. Another area of metaphysical interest is the notion that we want to know the nature, that we want to know what is the nature of ultimate reality, what in our lives is real and not real, what do we think of as something, and when do we think of something as not something. As mentioned earlier in Aristotle's Metaphysics, I know it's cutting this off slightly. Let's see, can I move that over? Yeah. Metaphysics, we find the categories which are ways in which we predicate things. So that word predicate is key. Oftentimes students think that means predict, but a predicate of a sentence is the way in which we describe what the subject is doing or not doing in a sentence. Okay, so in the early 20th century, Heidegger's teacher Edmund Husserl named this type of thinking categorial intuition. That is to indicate what something is. Okay, and then as we're showing, it's also having to do what is not. To predicate something, not to predict something, but to predicate something means to describe what a thing actually is. Essentially, when we predicate things, we are also considering things as a subject of thought. Okay? So that is the core definition of what is meant by categorial. Okay? Now, we have a tendency not only to think that this means predict, but also that categorial has to do with categorizing. Now, that's true. It does have to do with categorizing because, for instance, when we predicate something, we're categorizing the subject into a very specific activity or non-activity, right? In other words, it is a form of categorization. So when we categorize things, we are metaphysical, okay? We are understanding something metaphysically. However, I'm looking for this essential meaning of what is categorical. Absolutely right if you include that it's about categorization, but I'm looking for this very specific meaning here. Okay, so know too that this feedback is for Introduction for Philosophy here at Red Rocks, and then also Introduction to Philosophy here at Front Range, okay? And so the other point to make too is that you want to stay within the word count. So let's look at this. So remember that the word count usually is 200 words. So you want to stay within that word count as closely as possible so that you do not risk the chance of 200 words there. You do not risk the chance of getting a lower score, okay? Because you can get a lower score if it's too much, okay? And so let's see. I think that helps. So I think why don't we just close it out here, and that's the feedback we have. These are the most common mistakes. Also, if I am highlighting grammar or spelling issues, that's also something that can obscure the meaning of your words. And then also too, do not forget always, and I point this out, I've already pointed it out several times, but we want to be sure that we're reading this, that you're looking at these grading criteria before you write, okay? Always sticking to the reading, and then always sticking to the word count as well, and then trying to stay away from examples that are too elaborate or that distract you. You really want to try to get in there, get your points down, make sure that your examples are not too distracting. Okay, so I think that helps, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.